Hi everybody. My name is Feng. I am a PhD student from Durham University, and today I'm presenting the paper my supervisor and I have worked on. So the paper focuses on 5-year-old children in England and looks at the relationship between computer or tablet use and early learning outcomes, specifically emergent literacy and numeracy. So in this presentation, I'll introduce the background of the study, explain the data and methods, and then the main findings and implications. Digital devices have become part of many young children's everyday lives at home and in early educational settings. Children are increasingly exposed to tablets, computers, and other forms of digital technology. So because of this, digital technology has become a common topic in discussion about early childhood. Parents, educators, and policymakers often focus on how frequently young children use digital devices and whether this exposure is related to their development and learning. So this question matters because early literacy and numeracy are important foundations for their later educational progress. Skills, for example, vocabulary and listening comprehension, counting and recognizing patterns begin developing early, and differences in these skills can appear before children enter formal schooling. So at the same time, children's early learning is also shaped by their wider social and family circumstances and backgrounds. Previous research has shown that socioeconomic resources, parental support, and home learning environment and other background factors are closely linked to children's early outcomes. So the starting point of the study is the growing presence of digital technology in early childhood, together with the need to understand its relationship with early learning in a broader social context. So building on this context, there are several limitations in the existing evidence on digital use and early learning. A common issue is measurement. So many studies use broad indicators such as screen time or frequency of device use. These measures are useful in large-scale research, but they provide limited information about the type and purpose or the context of digital engagement. So the evidence base also varies in scales and outcome focus. Studies that examine young children's digital experience in detail are often smaller in scale, while larger studies do not always include the direct assessment of early literacy or numeracy. Some rely instead on parents' report outcomes or broader developmental indicators. So this leaves a specific gap for this research. There is less large-scale evidence that combines direct assessment of early literacy and numeracy with information about children's digital use frequency and family background. And IELS data was used to examine computer and tablet use frequency alongside established child and family background factors. So digital exposure can be considered within a broader context of early learning. So the data come from the International Early Learning and Child Wellbeing Study. This is an OECD study of children at age 5 designed to measure early learning and development while also collecting background information from families, from parents, and also education staff. For this study, the focus is the England 2018 sample. The target population was children aged 5 and registered in early education and care centers or schools. The sampling design was stratified and two-stage. So centers and schools were sampled first, and then eligible children were selected within those settings. The final analysis includes 2,577 children with valid emergent literacy and numeracy data, along with their background information. So the two outcome variables are emergent literacy and emergent numeracy. Emergent literacy includes listening, comprehension, and vocabulary and philological awareness. Emergent numeracy includes numbers and counting, shape and space, and measurement and patterns. So each outcome was reported as 5 plausible values, which accounted for measurement uncertainty in the assessment. Higher score indicate higher proficiency. And in analysis, descriptive analysis, correlations, and effect size are averaged across 5 plausible values. The regression models are run separately for each of them. And here I'm only going to present the plausible value first in detail because the overall patterns are consistent across the 5 models. So the main independent predictor in the study is the frequency of computer or tablet use. This was measured through 4 parent reported categories, ranging from never or hardly ever to every day. And also alongside this, the analysis includes a set of backgrounds and family variables like immigrant background, SES index score, and special education need, and etc. And so here is the sample characteristic table of all the variables used in this analysis. The final sample includes 2,577 children. The sex distribution is balanced with just under half female and over half male. And most children in the sample were recorded as having no special education needs. For computer and tablet use, the most common reported categories were weekly use and everyday use, while only a small number of children were reported as never or hardly ever using a device. One important feature of the sample is missing data. As you can see, several background variables have substantial missingness, especially immigrant background, family structure, SES index score, home language, and computer or tablet use. To prepare all the variables for later analysis, age and SES are used as continuous variables, and age had no missing cases, while missing SES values were replaced with the sample mean. And because of the outcome are continuous, IELS scores like emergent numeracy and literacy. So the main analysis used linear regression. The categorical predictors therefore have, so they need to be represented through dummy variables with one reference category for each variable. For example, no special education need is the reference category for SEN status. And for categorical variables, missing responses were kept as separate categories. This helps retain the sample size and also reflects the possibility that missing responses may be different from the observed response group. So the analysis starts with descriptive analysis like correlations, effect sizes, which give an initial overview of the relationships between the variables and the 2 learning outcomes. And then the main analysis uses linear regression models for the 2 learning outcomes. The variables are entered in 4 blocks. The child characteristics are in block 1, and then SES and SEN status, and then home and family context, and then finally the computer and tablet use for, the computer and tablet use frequency. And within each block, the study used a forward stepwise approach. This means the model as predictors one at a time, keep the variable that makes a meaningful contribution to explaining the outcomes. Not every possible predictor is automatically retained or capped in the final model. So this approach allows study to examine whether computer and tablet use frequency as any further explanatory power after child characteristics, SES, SEN status, and home context variables have already been entered in the model. So here the results start from the correlations between the 2 continuous background, age and SES, and the 2 learning outcomes. So both variables show positive correlations with emergent literacy and emergent numeracy. Children who were older at the time of assessment tend to have higher score, and children with higher SES index scores also tend to have higher score. The pattern is slightly different across the 2 domains. For literacy, SES shows slightly stronger correlation than age, and for numeracy, age shows stronger correlation. At this stage, they're only bivariate relationships. So what they show is that age and SES are related to children's early learning scores before moving to the regression models. And here are the results shown as standardized mean differences for emergent literacy. Each value compares the average literacy score of a group with the relevant reference group, so the sign and size show the direction and magnitude of the difference. The largest negative differences are found for SEN categories, compared with children recorded as having no SEN, children with functional disabilities, cognitive behavioral, or emotional disabilities, and non-native language speakers that all show lower emergent literacy scores. And language and immigrant background also show clear differences. Children who spoke the language of assessment at home had higher literacy score than children who spoke another language at home, while children with both parents born abroad have lower score compared with the reference group. For computer and tablet use, the pattern is not simply that more frequent use is linked with higher literacy. Monthly use shows a larger positive differences than weekly or everyday use, and the difference for everyday use is very small. At the descriptive level, the digital use frequency does not show a clear linear relationship with emergent literacy. Here is the effect size comparison for emergent numeracy. So the strongest negative differences are also found for SEN categories. Children with functional disabilities and children with cognitive, behavioral, and emotional disabilities show lower numeracy scores compared with children recorded as having no SEN, which is special educational need. Family structure and parental involvement also stand out. Children in single-parent households show lower average numeracy scores than those in two-parent households, while stronger parental involvement is associated with higher numeracy scores. For computer and tablet use, the differences are a bit small. Monthly and weekly use show small positive differences, but can see everyday use show almost no difference from the reference group. So similar to the emergent literacy results, the descriptive results do not suggest that more frequent digital use is clearly linked with higher numeracy score. And here you can see the regression results. The left table shows how the regression model develops one step, like step by step, sorry. It reports the R value, R square change, and also adjusted R square as predictors are retained in the model. And the final model explains 29.5% of the variance in literacy score. And the right table shows the standardized coefficients beta for the variables retained in the final model. These values show the directions and the size of each association. Higher age and higher SES are associated with higher literacy scores, while a cognitive, behavioral, or emotional disability is one of the main negative predictors. And also computer and tablet use frequency is added in the final block. This block has only 0.5% of additional explained variance. Among the digital use variables shown in the right table, children who use a computer or tablet at least once a month, but not every week, are retained in the model, along with the missing response group. So for literacy, the main point is that the frequency of digital use has very little explanatory value once the earlier child, SES, SEN, and home context variables are already included. So here's the result for emergent numeracy. And the numeracy model follows the same structure as the literacy model, with the model summary on the left and the standardized coefficients beta on the right. The final model has an R square of 0.303, so it explains 30.3% of the variance in the numeracy scores. Age shows the strongest positive association in the model, and SES is also positively associated with the numeracy. Cognitive, behavioral, or emotional disability remains an important negative predictor. When computer and tablet use frequency is entered in the final block, R squared increases from 0.297 to 0.303. This means the digital use variables add only 0.006 to R square, or just over half a percentage point in explained variance. Among the digital use variables, children who used a computer or tablet at least once a week, but not every day, are retained in the model, together with the missing response group. So the numeracy results are very close to the literacy results. The frequency of digital use as only a small amount of explanatory value after the earlier background and home context variables are included. So across both literacy and numeracy, the results points in the same direction. Computer and tablet use frequency adds very little to the models after child and family background factors are included. Age, SCS, SEN status remain more closely associated with early learning scores. So the findings do not support a simple screen time explanation for differences in literacy and numeracy. Instead, they suggest that digital exposure needs to be understood as part of children's wider learning circumstances rather than as a separate explanation on its own. So for implications, the results suggest that screen time frequency alone gives a limited picture of digital exposure in early childhood. In this study, computer and tablet use frequency as only a small amount of value to the model after the child and family background variables are included. So when discussing early learning differences, it's useful to keep family background like SES, SEN, and home environment in view, and rather than focus only on how often children use digital devices. And also, there's a few of limitations here. And so digital use is measured through broad parent-reported frequency categories. So the analysis cannot say much about what children were doing on the devices, why they were using them, and whether adults were involved. So and also the data are cross-sectional, so we cannot make any causal claims out of it. Some variables have substantial missing data, like SCS, this kind of variables. And also, there's a point which is the sample comes from 2018. It's before COVID-19 changed many children's digital experiences. So yeah, these are all the limitations we should keep in mind. And that's all for me. Thank you for your attention.